Hi, welcome to another tier list video. Today I'm ranking the 16 personalities based on how chaotic they are. Let's get straight into it with ESTPs, and I'm going to put them into S tier because this type is so spontaneous, so chaotic. They are constantly willing to try new things out with extroverted sensing. And basically, if you're hanging out with an ESTP, you can't plan ahead what you're doing because they're just going to always be looking on the lookout for different things they can try out. And it's just so chaotic and fun and great. ENTPs, this might be surprising. I'm going to put them in A tier instead of S tier because although they are very good at generating ideas, trying to come up with different ways of doing stuff, and they can come off as very chaotic, especially to introverted sensing dominant type like ISTJ. Um, Actually, unlike some of the other types that are chaotic, which you'll see later, ENTPs actually, when you sort of trace it back, they generally have quite logical reasonings for doing stuff. Like you're like, oh, actually, that made sense. I could have seen why they did that. And as an INTJ, yeah, sometimes the element of chaos is kind of understandable, as opposed to an ESTP who generally there seems to be no pre-existing rationale for a lot of the stuff they do. With ENTP, you can kind of trace vague structure in their chaos. With ESTJ, I'm going to put them into C tier because, I mean, this type is very well known for their love of structure, but actually, when you go beyond the surface, there is a bit of chaos in the system. They generally like to follow rules, but if you can convince an ESTJ of another way of doing something that's beyond the conventional approach, they might actually be willing to give it a go and for the sake of productivity rather than pure sticking to the way things are. And that's the introverted sensing versus extroverted intuition, second and third function sort of clashing together. With INTJ, I'm going to put them in A tier. And yes, if you look at it from a pure extroverted sensing chaos perspective, then no, they're not going to be the ones randomly going out. They do very much plan things in advance. But if you look at it from the perspective of chaos as in sort of going against what's conventional, an INTJ is always willing to innovate and try out new things. Yeah, and sort of just look at things from other perspectives is one of the real strengths of INTJs. And yeah, if you just let sort of their mind work, then it is very chaotic. Sort of the things they can come up with, and sort of if you think of the metaphors and stuff, the amount of connections, the way they do it, it's so yeah, unconventional basically. With ESFP, I have to put them in S tier just because they're very go with the flow, do sort of things in the moment. I'd argue they're possibly more chaotic than ESTPs. Yeah, just because they're following their emotions rather than the logic. So there's a bit of a less of a you can't really trace it back as consistently as you can with an ENTP, ESTP, with the introverted thinking parent function logic. ENTJ, I'm going to put them in A tier as well because they very much do follow the very similar to the INTJ of they're willing to sort of break convention a lot of the time for the sake of sort of progress and efficiency. But at the same time, they will very much stick to plans quite well because if they're starting a business, they want to know this is the way it's going to go. They want to deviate from that too much, but they're also at the same time very open to things changing and adapting. So yeah, ENFP, S tier definitely, arguably more than ESTP and ESFP. This type is just it's a roller coaster with them because they have all the ENTPs connections and ideas. Let's do this, and then they also actually have the emotions oh, I want to do that, I want to do that, and it's all very chaotic. And yeah, it's fun but very chaotic. ISFPs, I'm going to put them in C tier here. If we're looking purely at creativity, then it'd be a lot higher up. But in terms of pure chaos, I think they're lower down on tier list than a lot of the other types. This type is very calm a lot of the time, and if the picture's painting, for example, they yeah, the ESFPs are very, very chill and don't necessarily deviate a lot from sort of their like hobbies and stuff, and which can be quite consistent. INFPs, um, I'm gonna put them in beta because unlike ISFPs, I think if they're going out in the world, they can be very like they want to do one thing one way, they're dead set on that, and then all of a sudden they come up with another like idea, like, oh, actually I could do this instead, and then they completely 180 change their mind, and now they want to do this completely different thing, and that's why I put them in beta. INTP, Eta, I realize like there's a lot of these, like I put all the NT types in Eta, and it's just because like they have the thinking structure behind them, but and it's like very innovative, these types, but they don't quite have the pure like wanting to just randomly go out and stuff and try different things like you have with the ST types, because there is ultimately that logical structure, but they're like pushing the limits of that logical structure, if that makes sense. Yeah, ESFJ, I'm going to put them in Theta. They very much do like their structure and sort of keeping sort of the status quo a lot of the time. But yeah, they will like the extroverts. They like to try things out as well to an extent, as long as they're comfortable with with the extroverted intuition child function. As long as they're comfortable doing it, they're willing to explore and try things out, and occasionally, yeah, break from the structure, especially if there's like other people involved. They want to help out with the extroverted feeling, or maybe like, yeah, if other people want to try things, they might be like, okay, I'll give it a go. ISFJ, after this type, is very good at structure, keeping things organized, and it can be a real struggle for them with that extroverted intuition inferior function to try different things out. So that's why after ISTP, I'm going to put in Eta because whilst not the most extroverted like type, I think where this type truly shines in terms of chaos is the amount of like spontaneous side quests they'll go on their own. So like if maybe in a social interaction, social situation, the ISTP just finds a way to just vanish and do their own thing without like saying anything. The INTP does it a bit to an extent. But yeah, that's why like they just spontaneously leave chaotic. Yeah. Okay, INFJ, I really struggled with bearing a category for this type because like I'd say like on like the surface they're very good at like keeping harmony, keeping peace with other people. They very much want to stick to like the status quo, and also they do plan ahead and like stick to stuff. I think where this type is truly chaotic, and I can't even comprehend INFJ's like inner worlds. I think just the amount of like conflict and chaos in them is insane. So like S tier on like the inner conflict of an INFJ and the chaos involved there, but it'd be lower down sort of how they interact with the world. So like it doesn't quite fit, but like beta is where I'm going to put them just to sort of balance that out. Let me know down in the comments what you think about INFJs, because this one was really tough for me to figure out. ISTJ, F tier as well, for very similar reasons to the ISFJ. They're very structured, very organized. Yeah, they very much don't like deviating from change. And then ENFJ, beta, they're kind of like the ESFJ in terms of wanting to sort of keep harmony, keep the peace, but they do have the bit of like the introverted intuition dominant parent function to like kind of want to explore, kind of like you get with some of these NT types that are just like they're sort of pushing the boundaries of with the intuition, they're pushing boundaries of what they can do. They're constantly trying to explore other ways of doing things, basically. And that's kind of where you get the sort of blend of those two types together, putting them in beta. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Yeah, do let me know in comments if you want any other video suggestions or anything. Like, subscribe, definitely, please. That'd be great. And hopefully see you next time. Other videos are available if you enjoyed this one as well. So yeah, thanks for watching.